Hello, everyone. Gia here. Happy December. Can you believe it's December already? Whoa. Well, this edition of the Chat Sphere, I am going live today with Miss Mecca Khan, and I'm so excited to have this great conversation with this human. Hi, Ivy. Hi, Rox. Hi, Guma. I met Mecca while I was touring in Durham, North Carolina. Here's Mecca now. And my cat. Cat butt. So I'm so excited today to bring this exceptional human on live to chat with all of us. Hi, Mecca.
Hi,
Oh, it's great to see your face again.
happy to have ya, happy to know ya, always around.
Mm.
How you feeling? How's life?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I spun a lot of fire and I was feeling a lot of fuel toxicity in my system from doing it for like 10 years. So I had my acupuncturist detox me, and frankly, I feel terrible.
That's okay.
So yeah, it's like lungs, nose, it's like in my joints, and it's like coming out with a lot of rest, but whew, she was like, yeah, there's a lot of toxins in your system. I'm like, that's what spinning fire does, I guess, when you do it for 10 years all the time. So, realities.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thanks for sharing. I love that you share.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I think it's also really important to honor how we're feeling and what's going on. But yeah, how are you?
I'm great. Just like really good conversations this morning. Really just like, just like really energizing conversations about change and art and all the things I love. So it's good. It's really good.
That's good. And here we are for another conversation.
Yes, we are. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, and hey, Meg's here. Meg's our biggest fans, I know.
Hi,
Yeah.
Meg.
So I was saying that I met you when I was in Durham and we were doing the Cult Your Nights show, and I was immediately just like, who is this human? They're so cool. Like, and seeing your art and the brightness that you brought on stage was so magnetizing, and having some really great conversations with you backstage was also hella magnetizing. So I'm just so grateful and honored to have like crossed your path and you know to be weaving and living with you here in this life, and I can't wait to see where it all goes. So thanks for being you.
Thanks for knowing me. I'm really glad also that we met in that show because that show was really, really interesting. Like it was just such like a very like well developed composite of a show. There was literally something for everybody, and I really appreciated that. Like that was a really cool show. Great show. Cult Your Nights. Everybody go. Those are great shows.
Right, and Joe Rose just had a little baby, so but follow Joe Rose and check out Cult Your Nights. It was so good. There was, you know it also takes a lot for me to be really surprised by a burlesque show these days, I think. And that one was just like, I was like, whoa, what is happening? There's so much cool stuff going on, so many little like bits and tidbits, and it was really great.
Yeah, I mean any burlesque show that has like tarot and like live painting, you're kind of just like already engaged. Like how do you go farther than that?
Yeah, yeah. And just lots of different interpretations of the theme was what really drew me in. Like I had my own interpretation of cult culture revival and culture nights and what that meant, with the dissolution, the alchemy, and then you had totally different takes on it that you brought. It was great all across. So plus tarot and live painting and a very pregnant Joe Rose hosting, at least hosting a little bit, but being present, doing burlesque.
It was so good.
Yeah, it was really good. Have you
Yeah.
done many shows? I know you produced a show recently. How did that go?
That was great. It was such a fun environment and such a fun like learning experiment, and I'm definitely going to do more production and producing in that nature with my wonderful partner in the future. And yeah, it's really nice also to be able to create the art you want to see, because at this point, as we dive into the conversation of tokenism, it's a deep ocean. It's a deep ocean, and what's happening is really quite we're drowning. We're all collectively drowning. And so it's kind of creating these, yes, tokenism. Tokenism is like really, really aggressive, especially when it comes to like, I don't know, the visible performers in burlesque, which is such a shame, because this is one of the only art fields and performance art styles that is kind of like communally funded. You know, we don't particularly receive like major amounts of money from outside sources in order for this to happen. So we have the power to change this. This is something very, very doable in this lifetime. So I guess my first question is, for you, do you notice tokenism in shows, and kind of like how that experience kind of manifests overall?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to first rewind, and just for any viewers who don't specifically know what tokenism is, to get into what tokenism is. So, in doing a little research before this, you know, like the dictionary definition of tokenism is doing like inviting diversity in an unmeaningful way in order to project the image that the diversity, the inclusivity is happening behind the scenes, by putting it in front of the scenes, but not actually working to make sure that the diversity is within all realms, right? So it's kind of tokenism is a surface way to show inclusivity, but not actually be inclusive thing. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I think one of the important keynotes of that is like to say that it is not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a consistent effort. One of the easiest ways to understand tokenism is the reoccurrence of white-bodied and white-presenting performers compared to any BIPOC performer, and how that also relates economically, because of course this inherently says that it is harder to be a full-time performer if you are a BIPOC compared to being a white-bodied and white-presenting performer. And then what does that allow for consistency and longevity of this field? And so, yeah, so I was doing a little math. Wait, first, do you have anything else you want to say? Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's great. Okay, so tell me about your math.
Okay, so I was doing some math because I love math. I'm not very good at it, but I really love it. And so I was just looking.
Being good at it's not being good at it. It's about just using the tool, you know?
You know, I can use a calculator really well, and that is where my skill lies. I'm very proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
So just looking at as we approach, as we all know, the Burlesque Top 50 is happening currently.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I just kind of felt that motion like needs to be expressed to it, because a lot of people don't know what it is. And so essentially, for anyone who doesn't know, it is a public opportunity for performers or performer appreciators or creators to kind of vote in and have a conversation on people who they think have improved or benefited the field of burlesque, which is very exciting, of course, because it's an incredible honor, obviously, to be like nominated. And also, you know, in some ways, like, it can help when it comes to receiving opportunity for the future. And definitely, it obviously helps as far as like gaining notoriety in this field. And so in the United States, I mean, there's like roughly around like 5,000 burlesque performers. And I would say probably around a little under like 1,000 consistent professional performers. And by saying that, meaning performers who probably perform more than 6 times a year. And like, that's already a lot because realistically, again, this is an economic based field. So in order to afford this means that you have to be able to first and foremost afford the gas money to get to said show, because I think that very few of us live in the venue that we perform in. So that automatically is kind of a financial need. Like, I don't think that, you know, most burlesque performers are performing in their living room every day. Like that, you have to go to a venue to be able to afford to go to the venue. Which, you know, of course, doesn't put into composite like the 4 hours of, you know, full body lemurring, of, you know, having to prepare yourself to be show ready. And so the math. So I was looking at the burlesque top 50 from the past 4 years, specifically citing 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. Saw you on there. It was so fun. It was so exciting. I was like, look at you.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that too.
Oh my gosh, I was like, I feel like that's what most people put in their like bios. You're like, you know,
No, it's
the
totally
less
in
top
the
50.
bio, but I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I'm in it. It's cool. Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to talk about with the burlesque top 50 and kind of like the opportunities that it perhaps allowed you, or the notoriety, or even just like as far as like Instagram followers increasing, like something of that nature?
Oh yeah, I guess so. You know, it, like you said, it definitely does help to increase the know of who you are and what, you know, like what opportunities you can be afforded. This is probably not a popular opinion, but I also feel like it's kind of a popularity contest. It's like, because the way that you get people to vote for you often is by telling your networks and telling your fans to vote for you, which I know I definitely did the second year that I made it on there, but I haven't done it since. And it's just really interesting to like, it's not as a rule, but just like with any of these things, you know, like the vote for me can do that. But then again, what is the most popular, the top like artists in burlesque, other than the people who are most well known, who have the most followers, who then say it. So it is also that's not to it's totally valid. It's not to deny the validity of anything, but it is also this by popular vote. This is who does these things, and if you speak to it, then it happens. So it's a vote of confidence in the people who are put up there, and that's a really important thing. And it is fantastic for your career, for your notoriety, for the opportunities you're afforded, because then in turn it also means that you are speaking about it. People are giving you a vote of confidence. They're telling you, we do think you're fucking awesome. Let's put you on that list, you know? And so in so many ways, it really, like you're saying, does work in order to do that. And so in particular, I noticed something really different about the burlesque top 40, top 50 from last year versus the past 3 years. And perhaps you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because I mean, the math. So when I was doing just the mathematics of, if you look at the 2019, 2018, 2017, just the representation of performers, it's not great. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a demonstration of inclusivity, equality, equity, any of the fun words that we hold dear and near.
Mm-hmm.
There actually was a 30% chance of an observation of seeing a BIPOC on the burlesque top 50 for those 3 years. And then there was a 22% jump in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So there was actually a 52% representation of BIPOC performers. And so what that really goes to say is, again, so how do we keep this being consistent? How do we keep this kind of being not a fad, not performative? How do we keep this really the conversations going? And so I guess in relationship to tokenism, my conversation that I would like to say is that I'm seeing a lot of shows go back to tokening casting. And that could, unfortunately, change the metrics and the representation that last year had as being, yet again, inconsistent and not being one that we really are working for and working towards. And I mean, at this point in time, like, to have an all white presenting or really white presenting show at this point, like, it takes effort. Like, you actively have to like not be putting in any sort of effort as far as actually looking at the Black Burlesque directory, looking at, I don't know, perhaps any other performer in your area that you are not related to or could look like you are related to. Um, and so it just brings up this question of, again, like, how does it affect you in the space if you, obviously, as a white bodied and white presenting individual, are going to a space and recognizing that tokenization is happening? You know, I know for myself, like, it definitely creates a sense of concern as far as safety, because I know that realistically my voice is disproportionate in this room. And so that definitely can come into play as far as silencing or believability. And especially when you look at this map, it's one of those things where there's no way you can look at this, especially because these are pictures of people that you can scroll down and not notice. And it creates such an opportunity as far as professional longevity and economic opportunity. You know, it really is important that we truly demonstrate the full narrative of the performing artists in this field, but also allow for this to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important to look at that. So I didn't realize that was the question, and my brain's a little slow. Yeah, it's interesting and important to both look at those numbers, look at how diverse the spectrum really is in burlesque, and how and like find the depth and the gosh, okay, so what am I trying to say? Right, so if we look at the essence of tokenism, right, as being this like surface level thing that doesn't hold integrity in its own way, right? So how do we then, as a white human, right, in my world, how do I then forge that trust in those relationships, and make sure that broader spectrum of humanity, of everything, is truly shown from the inside out, and how to notice when it's not, and how to speak up when it's not, and I think the greater challenge in tokenism is that a lot of white humans who don't have relationships with BIPOC or diverse humans or different humans in general, is that they don't have that, but they want to try, and so then they turn to tokenism in order to try to afford these opportunities, or like give this opportunity, but in the essence of it, it's more problematic. And so it's an interesting like catch-22 that's also on the surface without actually like going into the root causes of things within one's own heart, one's own mind, one's own society, culture, friends, and just kind of like slapping that band-aid on the outside. And so I think that tokenism in so many ways, and looking at the ways in which it's utilized, like really showed the depth of change that has to happen on a really deep level, and that is already there and happening, and how we need to foster and encourage that. I went in a totally different direction.
No, I just think it's important to talk about, like, also kind of like the opportunities within this of, like, if BIPOC performers were prioritized as just in general, just prioritized, there would be such a greater opportunity for so many other performers to be able to thrive in this field, and also to create a broader audience for this field. Mm-hmm. And this art form has a lot of great opportunities. Like, it truly does have, you can see any kind of storytelling in burlesque, which is really beautiful. However, we have to be very, very mindful of the people who get their stories told. Mm-hmm. And what's happening time and time again is that when it comes down to, like, even the concept of a residency, that could be such a changing thing for it to have consistency as far as just an opportunity. And so what we're finding, especially now, is, consistency is only gained to the people who are the creators, and the creators tend to be white presenting and white passing performers. And so, and not even white passing, excuse me, but specifically white presenting performers. And then this repetition of, I don't even know, just negligence. I think that's slightly appropriate to say. It's consistent negligence, because the reality is active racism is work. And that's okay. Like, if racism was treated like an anaphylactic allergy, things would be incredibly different. And so that's really like where my mindset is currently, of like, it needs to be treated that way. Like, as a white body person, in my dream fantasy world, I would advocate for anyone who says they are an ally to actually verbalize, and question before they accept. Are there going to be other BIPOC performers in this space? Is this possible? And before they step into this space to yet again benefit from the constant lack of diversity, really holding ground to just some alignment of personal values. Because that's really the thing, is what I'm noticing is that there's such a separation of personal values and performer values. And performer value means I show up, I hold space, I take space, and I do my thing. And then their personal, underneath their little bio, will say, well, Black Lives Matters. And, there was a black square once upon a time in a fever dream memory known as, June 2020. Like, it requires consistency. And there are also like people and programs out there that are built for this kind of work. And it does require consistency. It is an untraining and a relearning of mind work and perspective. And if you don't have it, employ somebody who does. Hire somebody who can truly hold you accountable, or establish, especially, and the best bet, find a community that can hold you accountable and be receptive to that information. Because it's confusing to me that, there was such a shift in the representation in the Burlesque Top 50. And here we are, and I know one of the rules is that you can't campaign. So technically, like, you're not, like, there's very specific phrasing on how you can inform people about this. And then that also comes down to a conversation of like, did you really have an equal opportunity as far as reach of audience? Mm-hmm. And who really gets, how do you get reach of audience as a burlesque performer? Will you perform? And are you performing the most in order to get the biggest reach in comparison to someone else? Well, how are you able to perform? Well, then realistically, again, this comes down to a situation of economics. And so it all is the same conversation. And yet I would just like to say, performers travel, performers of all variety travel, but there needs to also be a value economically in order to enable this kind of traveling. And it consistently allows for this kind of effect of visible and very obvious tokening, where there'll be one performer of color, and specifically usually a Black person or a Black performer. And I definitely have experienced this quite a bit. And there'll be, 3 or 4 other white presenting or white body performers. And it's an incredibly sad feeling. Like, I don't know how else to explain it other than just kind of sad and unfortunate, because I recognize in this moment in time that, like, again, like, my safety is not guaranteed because my voice will be outnumbered. Mm-hmm. And, there's this beautiful quote, Dr. Rosales just posted this. If no one knows her, follow her. She's incredible. She does a lot of unlearning as far as decolonization mind work, and just beautiful, beautiful resource, especially for anybody who's white-bodied or white-presenting. And it talked about that white women will choose whiteness over womanhood every time. And this is very obvious. Because we wonder why in burlesque we're still having the conversation of fat phobia or homophobia or any of these, is because, again, we are so directly tethered to the patriarchy and the rules of colonization of value. And I mean, one of the things that I especially saw from 2019 to 2020 was an extreme lack of, well, not even a lack, but really an issue of colorism. And I understand that, yes, there has been, and this colorism directly ties into tokenism, of the fact of like, you have to be able to see it all to know it all exists. And if you are able to provide a constant opportunity, or there is a constant opportunity, excuse me, being provided to the same white body performers, what is that really showing and saying to your audience who has value, who has hierarchy? What is this also saying and speaking as far as economic opportunity of who can really survive off this? Because this is an expensive field to be in. These fans are expensive. These costumes are expensive. Rhinestones are not cheap. Every boa is expensive. Like, this is not a field to go into lightly if you want to be successful. It requires such meticulous timing and patience, because if you try to do 12 shows a month, you will be broke. You will be broke. You will be broke, because chances are you're probably creating a new act for every show. And it's fine. We all do this when we're new. I respect it. I understand. I feel you. If you've done it too, I hear you. I see you. It's okay. But you wisen up and you start investing heavily, and you realize that when you start a costume, it takes years to be fully developed. It may take time to fully create the composite that will be your finished or somewhat near finished product, really, because is it ever finished? Because it's going to require constant repairs. But also, I mean, that's the truth of it all.
It's so true.
And so, you know, like, well, it's one of those things where, again, like, when you consistently allow for tokenism in this field, and it's one of those things where also, like, as a response to Black Lives Matters, you know, and every single festival or whatever who came up with, you know, a nice little black square came up, and of course, like, vocalized allyship. How are festivals not free for BIPOC performers? Period. Under any circumstance, how is it not free? When we know that there is just a consistent lack of representation due to the economic dissonance that has been consistently upheld in this country. And that's just basic math. That's facts. We all know that people get paid less depending on their gender, depending on their ethnicity, depending on their race. We have these metrics that are already publicly known. So to deny that they are in effect in burlesque is a very, very close tether to an all lives matters. And that in itself denies the difference of experience and denies the historical difference that currently exists. You know, if you say you want us, make it easy for us to show up. If you say you value us, make it safe for us to be there. And it's just such a simple thing. So I suggest treat it like an anaphylactic allergy. Before you step in that space, you read the ingredients, you look around, you make sure it's safe before you have to go shoot yourself with an EpiPen. Because this is one of those things where at some point, it's not a question of, is it safe? The question is, we've seen it be unsafe so many times, so why would I go back? Why would I do this to myself? How could I knowingly jeopardize my safety and my artistic integrity, which is in conjunction to my personal integrity? And that's a really big thing, is don't forget who you are because you've changed your look. You are still who you are. Hold yourself in congruence to the same values you hold personally. If you're not about racism, make sure that this isn't happening, because the reality is that it's happening more often than people want to admit and people realistically want to address. And I'm seeing very little action as far as being actively anti-racist, other than the verbalization of it being so. It's fun.
Yeah, it's, whew, well, I feel like that went all through all of the possible
Well,
aspects.
I mean, it
That
just
was
like,
great. Yeah.
huh?
Oh, that went all through the possible. You took us on a journey there. Thank you. You know, and at the end, thank you for just dropping it to the fact that it's not enough to just say you are anti-racist, you know, or trying to do these things. It is about
the actions within it. It's about, right, repatterning the brain and learning from my white-bodied self when it's happening after not being taught or not being shown, or not being encouraged to see these things happening. How do you retrain your brain to see them? How do you repattern it? And then how do you speak up for it? And one of the shitnesses of whiteness, right, is rocking the boat and being ostracized, which is also something in my world I don't give a fuck about most of the time. But I also know that that's a thing for a lot of humans, to be scared to rock the boat and lose the privilege of whiteness. And like, there's not that perspective of the oppression that has been felt by other bodied humans in so many ways. And it's not just ostracization. And belonging is one of the deepest needs of humans, but it's hard to see that belonging when it becomes an immediate fear to you, and that's all that you've been ingrained upon. So what I'm trying to say here is, other white people who are listening to this, please look beyond yourself and look beyond that immediate fear and see that that is also something that's been implanted in your head, and that it is really important to continue to learn, to recognize, to call this out, and to try harder, do better, to see all this. Because it's a, as you say, Mecca, and as you point out too, the patterns and the histories of the lack of diversity and the lack of variation within, and the lack of safety in that diversity, and the lack of value in other humans, of BIPOC humans, voices and bodies on stages. And I think due to also the patriarchal colonizer values of specific tropes of beauty and of not wanting to rock the boat, like, it just goes back, and it's also balled up, kind of like you were saying, the economics lead to, like, being able to do burlesque, which means that you can perform burlesque, which means the audience to then vote you into the top 50, blah, 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 right? It's like, these also have all of these circles that we have to start to think out of and bust out of these circles, and then start to help other humans bust out, having privilege of being a producer or a human with a voice that can be listened to safely, like, how do you start to say these things and recognize them and get out, but I also see deep change like this takes a lot of time, and while I'm always a human who wants it right fucking no, like, it is a thing that takes time, and I think the more that we work towards it, the more energy put towards it, the faster it will advance. But it also still takes a lot of time to get people to wake up, to repattern, and to flow with that. And the time is now, and we need to have a lot of energy to put into that, because it's so oh, my brain is so slow but so lucid. I'm also bleeding today, so I'm like deep out into the ether.
It's a very emotionally tingly day for you then. That's like a very, like, it's a very tingly day. I don't know how else to describe it other than tingly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think that the biggest thing is that more people agree with this conversation. It's just collectively, either A, we don't know each other. Most of us also don't have the economic opportunity to travel and meet each other. So the opportunity of a conversation like this is really awesome, because again, it allows us to meet people who also agree with this, and really establishing and creating community to have these conversations, and also just share resources to be like, hey, look, I read this thing, it was super impactful. My number one resource is always to promote Lovecraft Country, specifically the podcast. The podcast has a deliciously wonderful breakdown of, like, other resources as far as poetry and music and essays, and it just gives a lot of understanding to the fact that, like, this is happening everywhere. I mean, we're seeing it with, the giant acceptability of Hamilton, and we're seeing it, with finally having a Black Christine Daae on Broadway in Phantom of the Opera. Like, this is all happening kind of at the same time. My confusion is that because this is all community based and we're all really, the only people who really kind of know about burlesque are people who know about burlesque. You know, we're not mainstream enough yet as a performance style where it's like, oh yeah, you know, ballet, jazz, tap, burlesque. Like that's not the order it goes in yet. But it totally could be, you know, maybe in the future they'll offer that more commonly and we'll have, you know, perhaps instead of ballet, of course, which should be just put as a secondary style, and modern and African techniques and styles. And specifically that should be forefronted, but we'll talk about that later. You know, it's one of those things where it creates such a, getting on something like the Burlesque Top 50 and the reality of what this really does mean speaks so heavily to the values that we hold in this field as burlesque performers, as a burlesque community. And in order for this to be consistently changed, BIPOC performers have to be given a prioritized opportunity as performers. And that needs to be consistent. And as I'm noticing, we're entering the latter part, the fall. I don't know, what is this? What, winter? We're in winter now? It's 60 degrees, so I don't understand.
I know, but we're almost technically to winter. We start on December 21st.
Yeah, it's happening. Fall, we'll say fall. And as we come to this moment of pause, of emotional pause, and, you know, of course, this fun, like, I always call it like the decay of the end of the year, which is such a fun shedding. It's such a fun shedding season. Really evaluating as we observe these all white presenting and all white bodied performers occupying consistent space. What is that really doing? What does that really say? And do we really want to say these same things again and again and again? And really, is that the message we're also speaking towards? And yeah, truly just recognizing and responding as anaphylactic, because I know it sounds so silly, but it is one of those things where if you wonder why, as a white-bodied or white-presenting performer, something happens that's untoward or cautionary or problematic or even as far as assault, this is a muscle to relearn, to be able to speak up and speak out. And it takes practice to be able to do these things. And so, you know, in many ways, having this full perspective genuinely keeps you safer, because at the end of the day, it's more of a consideration of everyone versus a conversation of just, how am I doing? What's happening for me? And the reality is we're not expected to really know or really be able to, we can't know more than we're actually exposed to or educated on at the current moment, but allowing ourselves to be receptive to that education and that perspective and other perspectives, especially when it comes to, you know, you do have the right as a patron, as a guest, when you go to a show, to vocalize how it went. And if you're in a show and you see, you know, a multitude of performers who could be related or look like they could possibly be cousins, the reality is that it's probably not a diversified conversation. And at the end of the day, realistically, are you going to go see that again? And that's an honest to God truth, is it's like we have such an issue with reoccurring performers and patrons. And a lot of this is this conversation of that they are seeing the same performers again and again and again and again. That's not creating or demonstrating the true scope and spectrum of this. I mean, there's classic burlesque, there's neoclassical burlesque, there's burlesque with swords and burlesque with fire. Like, there's so much in the spectrum. So to continue to cast the same people and the same kinds of performers is really just a disgrace for the representation of this country and realistically any of our communities for the most part. You know, it's not a global perspective of really the greatness of this field. And that's the whole kicker, is this Burlesque Top 50 is technically supposed to be a representation of this whole field on a global perspective. And globally, BIPOC individuals are the global majority. So this information does not hold true other than to say that economically we're still allowing white bodies to prioritize in this field. And it is such an unfortunate shame because the fact that you can find burlesque in almost every country, almost everywhere, it's very exciting. I look forward to the fact of like going to London and seeing that style of burlesque, and then going to Paris and seeing that style, and specifically going to Japan and seeing that style of burlesque. I'm very excited about Japan burlesque. But this is everywhere. And so the fact that these voices are not celebrated or even recognized, it doesn't particularly, it's a fragmented perspective. It's not truthful. It's not honest. It's not earnest. And I think that we genuinely all owe it to ourselves to allow for other people to exist, because it's truly a representation of the world. This is not. So let's work on it. Let's be better, because people deserve a chance, just a chance to shine and to show up. And even just the conversation of like, you know, BHOF and the Burlesque Hall of Fame, which of course, like, is very exciting. It is an incredible honor to perform there. I can just say that that's what I've heard. I have not gone yet, mainly because, again, economically, this is a very expensive thing to do. Like, this is not to travel to a different state and then to stay there. This is economics. And so at the very minimum, allowing the opportunity for BIPOCs to enter for free at least alleviates just one of the borders that has been historically consistently upheld, and would allow for such a greater opportunity of representation. And yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious also to see how this most recent top 50 comes out. I hope, I can't even say I hope, but I'm interested to see how it works out, because this is visible and we all can see this. And we're probably seeing the same representation mimicked at every regional show or any local show or even any high class show. We're seeing the same kind of value system mimicked.
Yep. Every Keys and Cameras says exactly that, is that and it calls into question the barriers that are exacerbated by privilege inequalities. So, you know, it just goes specifically, my brain is so slow. It goes specifically to, I'm wearing my Bally Met shirt. To how this, like, these barriers and these privilege inequalities don't just exist in one place or like one field, right? It is that broadness of perspective that's necessary to look at how that has infiltrated everything, you know, and how do you level that? How do you start to change and like what's the word? Divest your privilege, divest like what you have in order to start to afford, offer, extend those opportunities to BIPOC individuals, people whose voices have not historically been valued or heard, but now they are. We're just going to say that they are, because as we say they are, it's going to happen more and more every fucking day, right? It's me looking at the positive place of being your face.
Smile.
Yep. And I mean, I get it. Like, they're not always, but I also feel like if we say that they are, like, I value that, and I know many other people who do, and by saying that they are, it will, I hope, help to convince other people that they are, like, without any question. You know, that's just me being as positive as possible. So something, my brain's slowly turning off, so I know my brain's going to need to wrap this up really quick, but something that I think about a lot is how important it is to foster the growth and give the stage time to humans who BIPOC, queer, super queer, trans, right? Whose voices have been quieted, killed, if you will, even, and really pushed down. So how, as a teacher and as a mentor, something I talk a lot about in my circles is how to foster that education and make that education and that stage time, which is an education when you're first starting out in burlesque. Like you can't just never do burlesque and hop on a stage with a whole cast of humans who's been doing it all the time, and feel really comfortable or feel like you know that flow. If you're not a theater person, or a performer in general. So how then and where are the places and the opportunities for humans to hone this craft, to learn it, to have the places, the safe spaces, the communities to hone the ideas and hone the craft of burlesque or whatever else it might be, like, and where does that exist? So I think that's also a precursor too to leveling playing field. I don't know. I fucking hate that term, but like, what do you call it? Like finding a greater ultimate diversity that is reflective of the world and the ways in which we should be listening to everyone's truths and values and stories. I think that it comes down to offering that opportunity even at a deeper level, because if you offer the opportunity to someone who's not ready or doesn't feel like they want to, like they may not take that opportunity. Because also Mecca, not everyone's seeing it, not everyone's like, fuck yeah, I'll do it, fuck yeah, we're gonna figure it out. There's there's so many humans who also want to need that deep um, percolating time, perhaps, and time to really like figure out how and where to go. So in my world, trying to offer those opportunities and trying to encourage other people to offer those opportunities and mentorship, and essentially divesting knowledge and opportunity and understanding, I think is a really important step in all of it in order to find this place that you speak of, which is already here, by the way, because we're fucking living in the present and we're manifesting exactly what I want to be. Losing sparkly brain.
It's okay. I know that you need to rest, so we are more than welcome to toodaloo if need be.
Probably soon. Yeah, Ivory Keys and Cameras just said uplifting brings others up. Maybe leveling assumes pushing down on some levels, and I think that is a very good way to put it. So yeah, level the playing field.
Yeah, and I think part of it is it's also like just allowing people to speak for themselves instead of making an assumption is a huge issue. I think that is a true thing of like there's a lack of conversation that has allowed for this kind of presence of assumption. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, especially given the fact that like, we talk about professional opportunities that exist, and a lot of it has to do with just like the ability to be considered for these things. It's not even an issue that there is an opportunity to apply for these things. It's just the fact that some of these are personal calls. Some of these they are pulling from people that they know. And again, it goes back to the conversation of like diversifying your friend in your social group and getting to know people. Which, the beauty of social media and being home is that hopefully we got to meet more people and know more people and meet friends, meet people that, inspire you and you'll hang out with one day. I don't know. Yay!
All that. Okay, my brain's really shutting off.
No, you're so good. I was like, I'm probably gonna go take a nap. So
yeah, absolutely. Truly, thank you so much for
yeah, always a good time to talk.
Yeah, having this conversation. Thank you also for having so many conversations, just in your life and for your candidness and your lack of fear in having and just like saying what you think. I really, really value you and that about you. So thank you so much for everything you are.
No worries. Always here. I like to think I put it simple. I like to think I try to put it real clean and crystal clearish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You go right for it, and I think to that too, I see a lot of humans not wanting to speak their mind straight up. And I fucking love that you do. Just clear, here it is. Boom. Facts, math. So thank you so much. I really appreciate.
Of course. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll talk
always
soon.
around.
We'll talk soon. And make sure that you all follow Miss Mecca Khan. And why don't you just hire her to come into your city to do burlesque? What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, burlesque, tap, fire, any of the above. It's fine. Just like options and opportunity.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. And I hope that you have a really lovely Wednesday.
Have fun. Toodaloo.
Bye.